Afraid you'll fall in love?
Something like that.
Well, I can see you have good taste. This is the one. 1962 Coupe de Ville. Does everything but make breakfast. What are you in now?
I had a Dodge.
Those are wonderful if you want to get somewhere. This is for when you've already arrived.
Is that right?
Of course, someone like you don't need to see yourself in a Cadillac. You're walking about in one every day. How'd you like your car to look like that?
Does anything but makes breakfast. I'm sure you're wondering, why am I starting this week's lesson in a more movie and theatrical way? Everything that we do today didn't start today, and it didn't start yesterday. We are always under the impression, and we think that everything that we are doing is very new, and it's very like, oh yeah, it just started recently. That is not true. Ever since humanity started, ever since civilizations started, we have always been in the business of sales. Either I'm selling you something or you are selling me something, but a sale is being made no matter what. A lot of the stuff that we see in fashion today did not start today. Obviously, you guys know that. And it did not start yesterday. It started a long time ago, of course, and it has evolved over the time. But anything that you really see about fashion in today's world, I would like to say that it actually started quite recently, as like in the 1950s, mostly in America. Because in the 1950s, which went into the 1960s, America had this change after the World Wars. And business was booming, industry was booming, and suddenly there was a need for amazing salespeople, amazing people who are very talented in sales. You could give them anything and they would sell. Like one of the greatest sales story was salespeople selling ice to Eskimos. You know, Eskimos are people that live in the North Pole and the South Pole. They live in a place where it's all ice all around them. But can you imagine somebody selling a refrigerator to somebody who lives in an icy area? There is no need for a refrigerator, but there's a story in business where they say that the greatest salesperson was the guy who sold a refrigerator to an Eskimo. An Eskimo doesn't need a refrigerator because he's living in an area where there is ice all around. All he has to do is just put it outside and it'll be perfectly okay. But he wants to have a refrigerator in his house, even though it's so cold outside. I mean, it's a story. But the reason why I wanted to start this lesson this way is I wanted us to understand, you and me, and often we don't. Often we think that it's not correct, but it is the truth, is we are in the business of sales. Either I'm selling you something or you're selling me something, okay? We are always selling no matter what. Now, we just happen to be designers. That's it. It is incidental. I mean, this class could be about architecture. We could be architects, we could be interior designers, we could be computer designers, we could be a designer of a pen, we could be designing cars. It doesn't really matter. See, we just happen to be in the fashion environment. That's it. It's not accident that we are, because we want to be fashion designers, but maybe tomorrow some of us might suddenly say, hey, listen, I'm very talented in styling a fashion shoot. So I don't want to be a fashion designer, I want to become a stylist. You are still selling a design idea, even though you might not be the designer, but you are selling the look of how the model is going to look in a magazine or in an advertisement. Maybe you're designing clothes for some musicians for their next music video. Maybe you're designing stuff in the movies. You could be anywhere. It doesn't matter. You could be designing clothes for customers that walk in and out of your design studio, or you could be designing clothes for people who want to use it in movies or maybe in TV shows. But the main thing is, we are all salespeople. That's what we are. Yes, we design. Congratulations, we design. But you know what? We have to sell our design and convince somebody else to say that, hey, this is a really cool design. We should make it. It's really cool. It will sell very well. You see, designers are designers. That's true. But a really good designer is somebody who also is very honest with himself, herself, and says, I love what I'm designing, but will it sell? Will it sell? Because if it doesn't sell, then I'm just designing artwork for the sake of art, which is good, but it's not going to sell. Nobody's going to buy it. There's something wrong with that. But I want us to be very honest and frank with ourselves that whenever we put our pen on paper and when we are drawing something, in the back of your mind somewhere, you must ask yourself, is this going to sell? Maybe it will sell, maybe it will not sell. It is very subjective. So I wanted to start off my lessons a little bit more pragmatic, a little bit more realistic. I want us to understand that we are not here to waste our time. Once upon a time, you could go to school and just do all kinds of free things, whether it works, whether it doesn't work, nobody cares. But today, because we have social media, Facebook, YouTube, anything you want, all you have to do is turn on your phone and you can be there. So the competition has changed. The marketplace has changed. Everything has changed. So the moment you're bringing your pen to paper, wow, you must sell yourself on the idea that what you're doing is going to be okay or it's not going to be okay. The video clip that I played and you saw in the beginning of this monologue, it's from a TV show. The TV show is not there anymore, but you can get it online. It's called Madmen. And it has to do with a bunch of people who are actually advertising executives or advertising creative people in Madison Avenue in New York City. And you give them any object and they will advertise it. They will make sales out of it. It's a very cool show, and I'm not here to talk about the show, but I'm here to talk about that scene where you see this guy who's a very senior creative executive, and he goes into a car, sales showroom, and he wants to buy this really cool looking car. And the salesperson comes to him and tells him, you know what, this car is like designed for you, for people like you who understand where they're going. Like, it was a beautiful transaction of dialogue between two actors, but it is very, very realistic that is how salespeople used to work back in the day. Even today, salespeople work that way. However, they don't really work in a showroom per se. Their showroom has now become social media, the internet. So now we are designers. So we are no longer designing stuff so that way it's going to be in a real shop. We have to understand that everything that we do has to be directly or indirectly related to the internet, to the social media platforms. Now that has changed the game a lot. So that means anytime you are designing something, you are asking yourself, how will this look online? How will this look online? How will people see it on Instagram? How will people see it on YouTube? How will people see it on Facebook? You see, the product is the same, clothes, but the game rule has changed. Now people like to dress up so that way they can take photographs and put it on Instagram. Before, that was not the case. You would dress up nicely so that you would go out to a party, or you'd go to a wedding, or you'd hang out in the evening at some place having tea, coffee, or a couple of drinks with your friends. And that still happens today. But now everything is changed, where we are taking a lot of selfie photographs and putting it online. This is something very recent that has happened in the last 10, 15 years, so to speak. Before that, it was never there. It was photography that was meant for press, means like magazines or newspapers, right? Once internet came on, everything moved from magazines to online. Okay, now I'm going to tell you why am I talking like this. When you are in trends, or if you are in fashion design, which applies to all of us in this class right now, the moment you pick a color, you should immediately say, how will this translate online? Because that's our playground. The moment you look at a fabric and the way the flowers are, the way the print is, you have to ask yourself, how will this look like in a photograph? If I took a photograph of this, like, I took the fabric, made a nice garment, and I took a photograph, how will it look like on Instagram? See, we are now salespeople on this medium. So we are no longer fashion designers where we just do fancy sketches all day long, because nobody cares except you and maybe people next to you. I don't think anybody really cares. What is the product that you are going to make? That is the key. That's the big thing right there. Is the product that you are going to make. How are you going to style that product so that it translates beautifully online for your branding purposes? Now, that is the name of the game. So in trends marketing, when you look at something, when you look at color, or you look at fabric or material, texture, feel of the texture, you have to start looking at it with the practiced eye. You have to start looking at it like a photographer. Like, how does a photographer see something? That is now our goal. We have to start looking at things through a lens of a camera as to how will that look like online. And if it looks good online, make it. So if you look at that advertising video, you will notice these two guys are talking, and they're talking about the car. Now, for the trends and forecasting scenario, angle, a lot of the colors that you see today didn't start today and yesterday, obviously. It actually is a revival. That means it has come back from the 1960s. Anytime you look at a fashion show today, in this year and maybe the year before, all these colors have a connection to the 1960s. So I want us to understand that when we are looking at something, please don't just try to look inside this time period. I want you to be able to go back to the 1950s, the 60s, the 70s, and start looking at colors that were existing in those areas, because those are the colors that designers are using today.